Good morning. As we join together this morning, know we are glad to have you here, regardless of your gender, race, age, class, ability, or any religious paths you may have traveled or not. I'm Vanessa Cowie, and I'm your worship associate this morning at the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County, where our mission is to support individual spiritual journeys and to promote social, environmental, and economic justice. When it comes to the COVID pandemic, we recognize we're all in this together, and we're grateful when you wear your masks while in the building, except when you're speaking from the pulpit, and when you sign in on the clipboards to facilitate any contact tracing. And please be mindful of the need for full air exchange between services and move into the social hall, if you would, after the service, and carry on with sistership and fellowship there. If there's a deep joy or sorrow in your heart that you would like to share this morning in our service, in our Cycle of Life ritual and Reverend Bob's pastoral prayer, please ask an usher for a piece of paper. The ushers are on either side now, and write it down, and the usher will bring it forward here to the front. And our final announcement this morning is pre-recorded. Enjoy.
It was the spring of 1999. And a group of UUs were meeting to discuss the possibility of starting a congregation in Brevard. Some in that group had been attending church in Asheville or Hendersonville, but they lived in Brevard and wanted a church closer to home. Others had recently moved to Brevard and had hoped to find a congregation here. My husband and I considered ourselves to be UUs, but we hadn't been inside a church in decades. Still, all of us believed Brevard could use a breath of liberal religious air. I was captivated by the idea of helping to make it happen. Not for me. After all, I hadn't needed church for 30 years. No, it was for those other people in the room, and even more for those who might someday walk through our doors and find something they never knew existed. A spiritual community that encouraged building your own theology. In June of that year, we became the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County. We didn't know if we would succeed, or even if anyone beyond the 26 of us who signed the charter would even be interested. And look where we are now. None of us in those early meetings could have envisioned the church we have become, or the impact we would have on our local community. As for me, I discovered I did need church. This church, not only for the community I found, but also for the encouragement to spiritual growth. And that's why I've been a supporter ever since.
We open with words from Ian W. Riddell. Come one, come all. Come with your missing pieces and your extra screws. Come with your hard edges and your soft spots. Come with your bowed heads and your upright spines. Come all you flamboyant and drab, verbose and quiet, fidgeting and lethargic, all you with large vision and tender hearts, all you with small courage and tender fears. Bring your lisp and your stutter and your song. Bring your gravel and your drawl and your lilt. Bring your anger and your joy and your righteous indignation, misfits and conformists and everyone in between come into this space and be welcome. Be who you are. Be where you're from and where you've traveled. Bring what you long for, and let us worship together. The flaming chalice that you see on the screen is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. We light it with words from Eric Walker Wickstrom. For each and for all. We light this chalice for all who are here and all who are not. For all who have ever walked through these doors, and for those who may yet find this spiritual home, and for those we can't even yet imagine. For each of us and for all, may this flame burn warm and bright. Our opening hymn today is number 38, Morning Has Broken. This is the time in our service for words of wisdom for all ages.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Lausch. I'm the CRE director. And before we do our words for wisdom, I did want to welcome a new teacher who's going to be helping to lead the children's religious education. And it's Carrie Branham. She's right over here, if you give a little wave. So glad to have Carrie and her son Roan with us. And just wanted to note, Carrie's first Sunday, I believe, that she came into the church was the last Sunday before a COVID shutdown. And so, Carrie, thanks so much for hanging in with us, and we're so glad you're here. Well, this morning and this month, we're talking about widening the circle, showing love and kindness and acceptance for more and more people. And we're going to be doing that in the children's time a little bit later, and we're going to be working on the 8th principle. And does anyone know what the 8th principle for Unitarian Universalism is? And any adults can raise their hand too or answer it. Peter. Do you have it, Peter?
I don't have it with me, but yeah, I'm studying it.
Okay, just tell us real quick what it is.
Not going to try to do that.
Okay. Tricia. Or Luke?
It went something like, I read it 5 minutes ago. It went something like, oh no, I forgot that.
Okay, no problem. Or anybody else? Accepting others and their differences. And racial equity, loving all people regardless of their skin color, lessening racism, and showing that white people shouldn't have to be the center of the story. And towards that, there's a neat story about a young girl named Belen Woodard. Some of you might have read about her. She started the More Than Peach project. And so let me grab a little thing here to help. And as I do this, would all the kids walk up here, please, and just come over here? And so Belen was in elementary school, and she was coloring with a friend at a desk, and Eli and Liam too. Would each of y'all take one crayon here? Just any crayon you want. Okay, just there you go. Take one. Would you like to take one there, Liam? Great. And look at those crayons. Now, are those crayons the exact color of your skin? No. Mine is a little bit. And what would happen in class is Belen was an African American girl. But friends, when they were coloring with crayons, would say, would you pass the skin color or the flesh color? And in a box of crayons, that's exactly what it was called, flesh. But it was not the color of Belen's flesh. Her skin was a lot darker. And she was troubled by this and started thinking about it. But how do you change something like that? Because Crayola crayons had that color of flesh, one color, for over 100 years. So she decided she would start a small project after talking with her parents. And when someone asked for the flesh or the skin color crayon, she'd say, what color was that? And they usually say something like, oh, kind of that peachy one there. And so she started doing that in her school. And her teachers were amazed by that. And so they started helping with it, and it slowly grew into Belen Woodard's More Than Peach project. So try and remember that, to look it up at home. And slowly over time, it changed into Crayola crayons, Colors of the World. And they have all these colors of crayons that are supposed to help you think that skin color comes in all different colors, not just one, and that everybody in the world is important, just like all these skin colors are important. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give a box of these skin color crayons to all the kids here, and we're adding them to our CRE program, so they're always there for use. So let's give everybody a box. I'll take the single crayons back, and you get a whole box to take with you. And just put them back in the box there. And I'll give you, thank you. Take a box. Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Jacob. And now Eli Seafelt, he's going to light the candle, and then we'll wave the kids out as we go to the children's class. Thank you.
Peace be with you, and our blessing as you lead us now. Oops, I have jumped the gun. We will now hear from Janice Cannon and Carlene Reagan. When we voice deep emotion in this community, we believe that our sistership and fellowship multiply the joy, and our mutual compassion eases the pain. We pause each week to open our hearts in this cycle of life. If you're watching this live online, please share your joys and sorrows in the chat, and we will light a candle. Reverend Bob and I, although we can't see the chat, we will light a candle for them as well. We light a candle for those who are grieving and for their healing. In particular, this candle is for Lee Rush's passing, and for his wife Jenny, and for their family. We honor the frontline workers on whom the burdens and risks of the COVID pandemic fall most heavily still, with this candle of gratitude. We light a candle for leaders across the world who are working to further a vision of peace and justice for all in the face of war. And this next candle is for all those who are suffering from the violence in Ukraine. Here at home, Black History Month is drawing to a close, but honoring Black lives must continue beyond just 1 month out of the year. Recently, our judicial system has called out and punished hate crimes and the murder of Black people, but injustice still taints our society. This candle is for our calling to side with love, to speak truth to power until Black lives matter. And with the next candle, we celebrate our circle of loving community. May the circle of love bloom wider and wider still until it embraces and heals this broken world. We light a candle for those milestones shared in the online chat. Ushers, have we any additional joys and sorrows? For relatives, Uncle and Aunt Ellis and Jean Kirk, who are in poor health. And a prayer for peace for the people of Ukraine. And we light a final candle for all those joys, sorrows, and milestones that remain unspoken at this time. Let us pause for a moment of silence to reflect on all the joys and sorrows we carry in our hearts.
The Lord is my shepherd, I so enjoy the contributions of this congregation. One, you pay me. That's a good way to enjoy it. But I mean, what we just saw there, the circle of women from, what was that, 11 months ago, filming that for a service, recorded service that we were doing while we were still not doing live for our services. And the beautiful music. Thank you, Janice, Carlene, all our musicians. The wonderful contributions of this place, and brand new people who step forward and say, yeah, I could do something. So we've got the new family showing up to help out with the children. What I'm rambling about, getting on with here is, this is one of those places that asks us to stretch outside maybe of our own comfort zones. And in giving something of ourselves in our moments of vulnerability, we come forth with creativity. We come forth with generosity. There's one ritual that we do, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to say this. I still want the basket to be passed because it's circular, and that's our theme this month. And I'd like for you, it's okay, you can use hand sanitizer afterwards if you want, to just touch it and pass it on, even if you have nothing to put in it. Imagine what you are giving and what you can give of your talent, treasure, trust, and time to this place. The ushers will now pass the baskets for our offering. What is given, whether visible or invisible, what is given in love, we receive with great joy, and we say thank you. I'd like to teach you a line in a litany. I'll be reading some lines, and then I'm going to want you to repeat this line back. And this litany was based on a pastoral letter written by Reverend Susan Frederick Gray back in 2017. Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray began her 6-year term as president of the Unitarian Universalist Association at that time in June 2017. And as president of the association, she's responsible for administrating staff and programs to serve the more than 1,000 congregations. And this litany was developed from that along with the help of Erica Hewitt, who's the Unitarian Universalist Association's Minister of Worship Arts. So this is the line I would like you to learn and say back. No one is outside the circle of love. So let's try that. No one is outside the circle of love. We got it? And if you don't have it the first time, we repeat it about 5 times. You'll get it by the end. All right. So we know that hurt moves through the world, perpetrated by action, inaction, and indifference. Our values call us to live in the reality of the heartbreak of the world, remembering that no one is outside the circle of love. We who are Unitarian Universalists not only affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we also affirm the inherent wholeness of every being, despite apparent brokenness. No one is outside the circle of love. We know that things break or break down: promises, friendship, sobriety, hope, communication. This breaking happens because our human hearts and our very institutions are frail and imperfect. We make mistakes. Life is messy. No one is outside the circle of love. With compassion as our guide, we seek the well-being of all people. We seek to dismantle systems of oppression that undermine our collective humanity. We believe that we're here to guide one another towards love, and no one is outside the circle of love. No matter how fractured we are or once were, we can make whole people of ourselves. We are whole at our core because of the great, unnameable, sometimes inconceivable love in which we live. No one is outside the circle of love.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle
the circle wide. We live in a world in which narrow minds, narrow hearts, smaller and smaller circles are defined. I'm preaching to a crowd that somehow has found their way to a circle of love which fits for them. And I'm going to tell you, draw the circle wider. Go wide. This month, as it ends here, as Vanessa said earlier, is Black History Month. And sometimes we assume that everybody knows exactly what happened in Black History Month, that this is a great month, other than the fact that everybody joked that, oh, we'll give the shortest month possible to this. The NAACP was founded in February. This past week is the anniversary of Malcolm X's assassination, and Trayvon Martin was shot 10 years ago this week. Sometimes we have to say out loud, say their names. Sometimes we have to remember that the way in which our society has worked has put some of us in the spot of being very unsafe, put some of us in the spot of not being within someone else's circle of care. I hope that weaves through your thoughts as I talk about widening the circle. I love history. Some of you really love the history quotes I was giving in the Universalism sermon 2 weeks ago. So, hey, if it works once, I'm going to try again. We got one that I left out last time. It was from Minot Justin Savage, a Unitarian minister who wrote a book called Our Unitarian Gospel, which when I saw it on a bookshelf when I was in college, in the college library, I grew up in a Unitarian Universalist fellowship of mostly atheistic, humanistic UUs, and that was like imbibed in me, and it was like, who could title a book Our Unitarian Gospel? Isn't that like, those words don't go together? But he did. 1898, he wrote this. He said this: the universe is infinite, God is infinite, truth is infinite. If then, on the background of the infinite, you draw a circle, no matter how large it may be, no matter how wide its diameter, do you not see that you necessarily shut out more than you shut in? Do you not see that you limit the range of thought, set bounds to investigation, and that you pledge yourselves beforehand that the larger part of truth, of God, of the universe, you will never study, you will never investigate? Oh, I learned so much from reading a book like that. Being around folks who are like, yeah, let's let some more people in. But realizing that no matter how they drew the circle, it still was leaving some people out. I don't know. I don't know exactly how it became that Unitarian Universalists got to understanding the circle needed to be wider. Wider still, as the song was singing. I don't know how long it took to get that litany in our hearts, 2017, for a Unitarian Universalist Association president to say no one is outside of the circle of love, as we said in our litany. I don't know how long it's still taking for us to draw the circle wide. I have a member of the congregation who anonymously anonymously sent me a packet saying, please don't demonize those of us who will not go to get vaccines. Here's a thoughtful Unitarian Universalist feeling the need to shield their name from their minister to ask this question. Within our midst, within this room, I imagine that there are some folks here who hear a word or two that leads them to believe that our circles are not quite as wide and that we don't quite understand that litany, that no one is outside the circle of love. Whether we agree or not with that person. The other piece that I find of this is that when we are in true relationship to what is stretching us, and I had a cartoon 3 weeks ago now that showed the heart trying to stretch the comfort bubble around the brain. The more we're stretched, the more whole we become. We have done so much good in the community. As Joanna said in the video, this congregation isn't just here for us, it's made an impact in the whole community, the ways in which we are involved. We help at Bread of Life. We have members who made it essential for the Haven and homelessness to be addressed in some way in Transylvania County. We have volunteers who spent a good deal of last year in the midst of unvaccinated kids at Davidson River School, working with at-risk kids and gardening, organic gardening with kids, widening things. But it's not just what we do for others. If we listen, we will hear that we ourselves must think of ourselves as not quite whole, that we need one another. The wholeness of all of this big blue boat. Everybody. Lilla Watson said it this way: if you've come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Our widening the circle has to be with that attitude. We're not saying, oh, we're going to help more people. It may be that happens, but it's because our liberation is bound up with everyone. Our narrowness is a result of our inability to have let others in. Our arrogance may have kept that narrowness for far too long. And we need our communities to do that. Angel Kyoto Williams Sensei had this quote in some of the materials that I had shared with me by colleagues for Soul Matters. It said, it's the community's job to figure out how we can stretch into the so-called margins to broaden our understanding and the ability to be inclusive. Inclusivity is not how do we make you a part of what we are, but how do we become more of what you are. Is that stretching? That's way outside of comfort zone sometime. But that's it. Draw the circle wide. And in drawing the circle wide, how do I become changed by that? I had a very deep spiritual experience as a youngster, a young adult. a moment in which I felt a connection to life, the universe, and everything. And like most mystical moments, it's really hard to explain, but it's as if I could feel that I was on this earth that was spinning so fast, along with everybody else in this vast universe. And then I had some little speck, like a star way off in this corner someplace, as a place in this universe. I explained it to a religious colleague at one point and said, oh, oftentimes I hear those things. And an elder colleague of mine was giving me feedback, said, oh, I often hear stories like that, and the person is feeling very grandiose in it, but you seem to be quite centered with it, and not centered in the universe in it. And I was like, no, I have a place, but everything was there. I would love for us to have those mystical moments, those things that tease out of us the idea that we were one star in something so vast that we can't look at it all at once. I go to poetry a lot, and the poetry and meditation class was this week, and I read a poem, and I'm not going to read it to you right now, but I will later. But I keep drawing from poetry, and Mark Bellatini, a UU minister who, at one of my first General Assemblies, was my roommate. He went on to really long and successful ministry, retired now, but he wrote a poem, Part as Parcel, Part as Parcel. And I'm just going to excerpt a little of it. I am part of you, O truth unfolding. I am part of you. I am part of a cosmos I cannot see. Either its edge or its end. How amazing. I am part of a galaxy of 1,000,000 billion stars. They say it's a pinwheel. How wonderful. I'm a part of a system of planets that swing around a small parent star. How strong the hands of invisible gravity must be to hold it all together just so. I'm part of a planet, green and blue, along with mountains and seas, sponges and spores, lichen and lava, robins and rain, periwinkles and perch, centipedes and cities. How great the variety, how astonishing the mutual dependence of it all. Mark goes on, but to end it there, how astonishing the mutual dependence of it all. We do not survive without one another. And that widening of ourselves, of the wholeness of ourselves, depends on that reality. What have you done today to be more whole? What have you done this week or this month to widen your circle? The theme is ending. What is a UU minister to do when you're done with widening the circle? Oh, that theme's over. Now we'll get on to, maybe awakening? Because that's probably something that occurs after the wholeness is an awakening. Rilke said, listen, I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I circle around God, around the primordial tower I've been circling for thousands of years, and I still don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? How do you imagine yourself in that? Rilke's imagination, fantasy. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? I know this. We know we are something more and greater than the parts. Part and parcel. We're more than the brokenness that we know and feel. The broken hearts, the broken promises, as our reading said. I know that all who come here, just like the welcoming statements and opening words, all of us with all these little bits and pieces of who we are, we come to this place first to be reminded that we are not alone, and then to realize we are part of a larger whole, this whole. But this whole is part of even larger than that. What this religion and other religions, when they get to the core of it, and when we get to the core of it, try to teach is we're responsible for that wholeness of ourselves and others, not as rescuers, though sometimes that may be a role, but as people who are transformed by one another. I told you I'd tell you a poem that I read in meditation class. I bring this binder to me when I go to the poetry and meditation class. And the one that I read this week is from Naomi Shihab Nye. It's called Shoulders. This is who we are to be. Oh, and the image that goes with this is of what appears to be an African American man on a city street holding something. And this is the explanation. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him. No car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say fragile, handle with care. His ear fills up with the breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. To the anonymous someone who sent me that packet, asking not to be made the villain, demonized. To the folks here who have your own secrets of ways in which you feel like, oh no, they won't accept me if I say out loud what I've decided in my life, who I am. That poem. We don't have the jackets that say handle with care, but we need that. And we need to treat one another that way. Not, this is my group. This is who gets into my group. But this is a universe. It's our universe. How do we all fit in? It takes a lot of empathy. And empathy is one of those things that is hard. Somebody's telling you their pain, their experience. And in that moment, there are different kinds of reacting. One is to shut down. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. The other is to tell a story and one-up the person. Oh, you think being run over a car was bad. Let me tell you about the truck maybe you don't know what to do or say. Empathy is hard that way, to be able to hear and reflect back that you've heard and you've sat with someone in their pain. Black Lives Matter is one of those things for a whole lot of folks. And back in 2017, people going to Washington with pussy hats. And folks that you just may see on a park bench crying. The world has pain. Leslie Jameson said, imagine someone else's pain with too much surety can be as damaging as failing to imagine it. Empathy is always perched precariously between gift and invasion. That's so profound that it would take its own sermon. But I say it out loud because to become a whole world, for a whole world, remember the mercy. Be ye whole as I am whole. That's a chant or lyrics by Darlene France. Darlene France is online and a colleague in the Soul Matters Consortium, and the materials shared brought that up, and I listened to it this week. Become a whole world, for a whole world. Remember the mercy. Be ye whole as I am whole. And as a closing quote, I'll go on to Leslie Hazelton from her book, Agnostic, A Spirited Manifesto. That's a great title, Agnostic, A Spirited Manifesto. 2016 it came out. It has imagery in it. Here's the quote. A classic Zen exercise is the enso, the circle hand drawn in a single fluid brushstroke. It is close to perfect, but never there. If perfection's what you want, you can produce it anytime by using a compass or a computer. But the enso defies such mechanistic precision. Indeed, it is often incomplete, left slightly open, as though an invitation to everything beyond it. And each one's different, never the same circle twice. You can see the hairs of the brush in the drag of the ink on paper, trace the fluidity of the moment when the stillness of the meditation was released in one rapid stroke, sense the calm grace of the artist. The beauty of the Zen circle lies precisely, or more precisely, imprecisely, in its imperfection. That's what speaks to us and draws us in. A perfect circle is uninteresting, a closed system containing nothing, while an imperfect one vibrates with warmth. It invites us into the moment of its creation, into that single deep exhalation as a hand arced through the air, the brush over the paper. It is open, human, fallible, an expression, that is, of our soul. Blessings to you. Let's close with our closing hymn, number 155, Circle Round for Freedom. I'll put my mask on along with all of you.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle
We will have the conversation about this month's theme, Widening the Circle, at 12:30 back here at UUTC after you go have brunch. And come on back if you'd like. These words, these closing words, are from the Soul Matters packet introduction this month. What if who we are doesn't end at the barriers of our own skin? What if sin is believing that you can put the puzzle together with only the pieces that belong to you? What if heaven is the moment you realize that none of us can get there alone? What if the only true freedom lies in the willingness to fight against that which imprisons someone else? Then let us widen the circle until it breaks. For as long as the circle exists, pieces and parts of ourselves will always lie on the other side of the line. So let us push, pull, twist, and tear, dig underneath and climb over the top, do whatever it takes to meet each other face to face. And having found each other, let us stare and struggle, fight and forgive, call in and call out until me and you dissolves into us. Is there any other way we become whole? May you become closer to whole this week and return again next week in love.